Hello and welcome back to On the House. Today we have Michael Lovegrove, and let's kick off by talking about the feast and famine trap. You work with a lot of B2B founders and kind of sales team leaders, Mike. What is this cycle that they're trapped in, and what are some of the symptoms that tell if a founder's trapped in this?
No, the best way to answer this is like when actually, Joe, first off, thank you for having me. Great to be on your podcast and yeah, to finally have linked up to be able to do this. What I see happen all the time, this goes from solopreneurs right through, right? They right through to sales teams where there's a bunch of people in them. They go off and they do this campaign. They maybe produce a few leads from it. They then start to work those leads. Maybe they then sign some of those and turn them into customers. And then they're dry. They're like, fuck, what do we do next? Excuse my language to all the listeners. I will drop the occasional F bomb as we go through today. But yeah, so they don't have like a consistent system or a consistent way to continually bring in leads. And because of that, they often throw themselves fully into it, into some lead generation activity, or they are throwing themselves fully into the delivery or the either delivery if they're an individual or into, okay, now they're in the sales cycle. And so we're not going to do any outbound related activities. So when I'm talking about feast or famine, that's usually the reason is that priorities shift and people don't have a system in place that allows them to constantly do both of these things at any one point in time.
That's interesting. And so I guess you're installing like a system into their are you working with the sales team or are you working with the individual? And what does that like system look like that you're helping them with?
Both is the answer to that first part of the question, Joe, where I work with founders to be able to create a very low touch version of the what I call the snowball effect. But I also implement this with teams. So it's something that scales with regardless how many people you have in the organization. And the point of it is to not give you a bunch of tools and say, hey, away you go. It's actually to make sure that whatever you're doing is wrapped around a core customer profile, a core avatar, or ICP, whatever you want to use. And to know what to do on a day by day basis in order to generate leads and close deals. Those are the two key things that we want to be doing, right? If we simplify it, it's every single day we should be doing things that do one of those two things.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to dive deeper into the how, but I think let's stick on the problem for now. So when founders like say stuck in the cycle for too long, what does it cost? Like obviously revenue wise, but what's like the bigger, wider cost to that? And then what's like the more like human impact that you see?
So I think that at a very high level, the number one problem that these founders have, or that even salespeople have, what do you think it is?
I would say I'd say having to prove every single month that there's growth. Just the idea of having to get better every single month would be my guess.
So even more simpler than that, because in order to get to that point, something has to happen. The number one problem that either entrepreneurs or salespeople have is leads. They don't produce enough leads. They don't know how to produce their own leads, and they're unsure about um, how to exactly go about it. And because of that, they end up in this scenario where they're like, okay, I'm going to try this thing over here. I'm going to try this thing over here. I'm going to try this thing over here. And all of it may work a little bit, but not really. And so then they're often on this, like this hamster wheel of trying to find these things. And then they hear about someone creating a complete AI system that is going to mean that they never have to do lead generation. And so they're going to subscribe to this thing that does fuck all for them and doesn't produce any results. And then they're back in the cycle of like, oh damn, I need to find leads again. And once they do have some of those leads, right, they're like, okay, now I need to make sure I throw all my effort into trying to convert these leads into paying customers, and they forget about the lead generation activity that they should be doing. And maybe that's a bit unfair. Maybe it's not that they're forgetting about it, but they're like, I don't have time to think about that because I have to try and convert these, or I have to try and deliver to these. And so they start to move into doing that. But again, because they don't have like frameworks or systems to use, they spend a lot more time on trying to convert and to deliver. And so that's when the first part of the equation falls over. So they end up, because they haven't systemized both of these, they end up over-indexing one way or the other. And what I teach a lot of these founders the founders and the sales teams that I work with, is how they systemize both, keep both going simultaneously, so that you continually do grow. And to your point, you continually are like every month you are growing without feeling like, I don't know what to do next. Like, I know I've got gaps, but I got no idea where to look. And so that's what the snowball effect is all about. It's like giving you and giving your team a systematic way of, I know how I'm going to be generating leads this week, this month, this year. I know what time of day I'm working on the particular activities associated. And then when I get bites from these leads, I know how to turn that into a meeting. And then I know how to turn that meeting into a paying customer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking this is like really relevant to kind of, I'm just thinking back to like when I've kind of, you go through a little spell like 2 to 3 clients signed, and then you're all in on content and all in on DMs, and then it's like, right, I want to do the best job possible. So you then shift all of your efforts into the doing. You're not acquiring any new customers, and then maybe you're doing a project with these people, so it maybe some of them stay but some of them don't, and then you're back to that. It's that, and what you're saying is it's kind of being able to do everything at the same time. Um, yeah, that's really interesting. What's your view on like lead generation? Because I think like I notice like salespeople are like the master of mindsets. Like you notice that a lot of salespeople become founders and CEOs. Like, and it's because I think there's a similar mindset there. Like I used to work in engineering, and the change in mindset I had to have to start a business was just like whoa. But you guys,
Yeah.
it's much more similar. Um, do you view like leads as, obviously I imagine you're like thinking about TAM, but are you viewing it as just like this massive pool and it's a playground, um or are you really thinking like what if you've only got 2,000 people in your TAM? Like how you've got to you've got less shots on goal, right? It's a much kind of scarier thing to like to kind of approach leads and work them, and to like, yeah. Do you see
Totally.
what I'm trying to say? Probably not.
Yeah. No, you make total sense. And so I'll answer this in a roundabout way, and I'll start with a bit of an explanation. Every single lead generation activity that you could be recommended is dead. It doesn't work. Every single one of those at the same time could be super, super effective for you. And the reason I say that is like you'll see people on LinkedIn more particularly saying that email is dead, phone calling is dead, events suck, LinkedIn reach is terrible, don't do that. And so they start to talk about all these different things. Partnerships are a waste of money. Everything, if you talk to enough people, does not work. And the reason why SEO doesn't work, the reason why all these things don't work for certain people is it depends on the business, right? It depends on what you are selling, and it depends on who you're selling it to, so your ideal customer, where they are, where they hang out, what they're trying to solve, etc. And it depends on your average contract value. So what is the thing that you are selling to an individual? If you are selling something that costs 100K a year, and your strategy is SEO, good fucking luck. That is not the strategy to sign 100K a year customers, right? And so what you then need to think about is, all right, based on my ideal customer, based on my offering, based on the price of that, what is the best go-to-market method that I can come up with, considering also the stage of my business? Just what I talked about there is when most people go wrong, because they see this tactic and they think we've got to do that. So, for example, a company that is selling into enterprise companies thinking that their method to get into them is cold outbound email. And sorry, I should say mass produced cold outbound email. Doesn't work. Will not work. If you are subscribing to the fact that that is going to work, just delete whatever project it is you're working on and start afresh, because that does not work. Or it's just hyper ineffective. So coming back to your question, Joe, around let's say I've got 2,000 potential clients in my TAM. What do I do? The first thing that I would be doing I'll talk about this to start with if you're an earlier stage company. You don't need 2,000, you don't need 1,000, you don't even need 100. If there's 2,000 total, maybe you're going to look at, I just need to get in touch with 10. I need 10 of these guys who I think could be an early adopter of whatever it is I'm doing to become a customer. And so you said something earlier about, don't want to burn some of these. So the way to not burn those is to not do some of this automated stuff. And I would advise that you end up doing some things that are non-scalable, that are humanizing, or that promotes you as a human to that individual. So what are some of those things you can do? Well, for starters, could you host, and this is all dependent on budgets, right? But if you've got a target group of 10 accounts, let's say, could you do a invite-only exclusive event for the buyers within those 10 companies? You invite them all along, you're going to pay for their dinner, and the key thing of that particular event is there may be a problem that all of them are dealing with, and you want this to be a Chatham House Rules discussion around what they're all doing to try and solve it. So you become associated with that value because you're facilitating this conversation. And the reason you're doing this particular strategy, right, is that you are selling something that is, if you've only got 2,000 target accounts, I suspect that is a high price ticket item. So you're not looking to sell something that's $100 a month. You're looking to sell something that is 100,000 a year, or more. But out of that discussion, you now have a pipeline of 10 people that will at least give you a meeting. At least. So you can then decide, okay, is there validation here? Can I move forward? That's one thing that I'd look to do. But it all revolves around that 10. Now I'm exaggerating a little bit, saying, hey, just have 10 target accounts. Like, you should have more than that, right? But just for the illustration purposes, let's say we had 10. The other thing that you would start to look at is, how do I couple that micro event with other lead generation tactics that are going to work given my ideal customer, given my average contract value, given my offer? And so the next thing you might start to do is start to socially sell. And what I mean by that is, you are finding these people that you're wanting to invite to your dinner. You're connecting with them on LinkedIn. You're also sending a personal note to them that might actually be a video of yourself where you're picking up your cell phone and you are recording a selfie video talking about whatever it is that is relevant at the time, right? So that might be that you are inviting them to your dinner, or it might be, if you've already done that, it might be some insight you had during the dinner and you're now inviting them to have a one-on-one conversation with you. And so we're starting to combine two lead generation activities, right? We've got this event and we have the social selling strategy of, we're going direct to people. Now, in unison with that, maybe we're also starting to create some content online on our LinkedIn profile where it's about trying to educate an audience. And if we understand that ideal customer profile and the problems that they have, that is where this becomes like an absolute weapon, because you are you are validating to them that you know this space when they see your content online, and everyone's going to start to scream about how low reach is and stuff. Well, whatever, it still works. Like, it's still better, it's still free, it's still a free way to get eyeballs. And so you're spending this time with them in this event, and they're seeing you socially. And then the other thing you may be doing is you're forming some very specific and specific partnerships with businesses that have a complementary product, but more or less the exact same ICP as you. And you just do those three things. You've got 2,000 accounts that you're going after, or 2,000 people within your TAM. And of that, let's take a subset of, I don't know, maybe let's say 100. So they're businesses you care about, and you just start doing these three things. And that becomes how you do your lead generation. And so you don't need to think about every day, oh, what do I do now? It's just, well, no, I've got these events planned for the next 6 months. I want to do one a month. And then I'm going to keep doing the social selling. And then depending on what happens at those events, I'm going to reach out to people accordingly. And then I'm going to make sure I partner with someone to do those events with them. And this creates your predictable lead flow. Now that's just a very quick example, right, of how you just bring different tactics together. But that's the type of thing that I'd look to do if I had a TAM of 2,000 customers around the world, and I wanted to find a way to start to pick them off.
Yeah. I think the key there is it's that dinner. It's the reaching out to them in the first place and saying, look, we'd love to invite you to a dinner, make them feel special. They're going to want to come along. Maybe not to this month or next month. You paid for their food. The thing is that would never enter my mind because obviously like I'm thinking I'm trying to relate from my bit. I'm just thinking we're bootstrapped. That's not really something we do. But I think for your customer, it's like their sales teams. They got a little bit of budget there. That's just the best entry point. Then they're in your network. Then you've connected with them at the dinner. Then they start to see your content. If your content's good, and then they're in this flywheel, like you say, where you can continue to kind of build relationships. Yeah, I really like that. The dinner, fantastic. Moving on then to your origin story. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but before Journey was 2016. You were
Yeah.
in product or project management type roles, and then you started Journey, and that's kind of where you kind of started sales, and that's where you got your B2B sales kind of schooling. How was that experience? Why did you start Journey? What problem are you there to solve? And what were some of like the big sales lessons that you learned there?
So the origin story of Journey is not a good one. It's not one that I would advise. So I was 24 at the time. I had just come out of, or I was working at a company that was going bust. And so myself and one other, we were like, what do we do for money? What are we going to do for money? We weren't getting paid. Like, payroll had been missed for 7 weeks in a row, and I was being paid fuck all to start with anyway. And so I'm about to go out the back door, and I'm like, shit, we need to do something quick. And at that age, I just naive, right? Bought into the fact that, oh, this company is going to get funding at some point. Never did. So we started our own business, and we raised some early capital, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea why. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. That was how we started. But over the next, I mean, initially we were a chatbot platform. So 2016, obviously, if we had have stuck around and kept going down that path, we would have just been eaten by OpenAI anyway. But that's how it started. Was like, hey, a chatbot platform for enterprise, and then it was over the next couple of years we realized we actually really needed a niche. And so we focused on insurance as the niche. And then the platform pivoted into an insurance distribution platform. And what it was a chat interface, way to sell insurance through your digital channels, at a nutshell. And we sold this to enterprises. Now, to come back to your question around like how did you learn to sell through that, was that in the first 18 months of running JRNY, we had 30,000 in recurring revenue, which is very bad, right? It's dismal. 30,000 New Zealand dollars, that is, which are, you know, not very valuable right at this moment. And so I was like, okay, I need to learn how to do this. I've got no idea how. Like, I think I'm pretty good at connecting with people, but that's clearly not the skill set you need for sales. You need something else. And so over the next 6 months, like I just threw myself into all these like different sales books, and I got some great sales mentors actually. And then in the space of like 3 months, we went from that 30K to like 360,000 in annual recurring revenue. No, 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 sorry, it was more than that. We got up to like 500,000 in recurring revenue. And it was just like bang, bang, bang. We were just hitting all these contracts. And by the way, we were pre-selling. We didn't even have the product yet. So it wasn't even like we were demoing, and then it was like we were able to understand. And so this is what I teach people. It's like I have done this. I know what it's like to go and sell something that does not exist, right? Because when we pivoted, we no longer had the product. We had to find ways to for them to buy into what we were going to have. And I didn't realize at the time, but that's not that normal to be able to know how to do that. And I came from sort of no background, which I think also helped me, because I think when you go through a traditional sales path, you learn by having a great product that more or less sells itself. So what happens when you don't have it? What do you do? And again, that's what I teach through the sales accelerator, and with some of the clients that I work with directly, is like how you can, you don't need the product to be operational to be selling, and you shouldn't, because the only way to test demand is for someone to pay for it. And if you don't have demand before it's real, how do you know someone's going to pay for it once it is real? I think there's actually, but there's so many businesses, and you're smiling, Joe, so I suspect you've seen this, where they go to market because they have finished their product, they're like ready to go, put it out there, nobody buys. Crickets. Pre-selling avoids that.
This is blows my mind. Pre-selling blows my mind. Is this doable because you're targeting mid-markets enterprises? They're listening to your message, they're like, this is a problem we want solving, and they've got budget for it. Is this doable with like small SMBs as well, or yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely is. And the way I look at doing this is, the first thing is you'll be going into them saying, we're creating this thing. We want you to be involved in the formation of the initial product. And so we really want to take on your feedback. We're going to more or less be custom building this for your needs. But obviously you're taking like a whole, because that's what you want, right? You want someone to want to, you need them to use it and be successful with it. So get their requirements, but pull your 10 people or whatever to build the initial product. Um, and and the even better part is, because it's going to be custom for them, you can charge them more. It's not $100 a month, right? You can charge them an implementation fee for this thing. And so you end up in a position where not only should you have annual recurring coming out the other end, you should have an initial injection of cash, should you do it right.
So is the injection to cover kind of the build? Like you're saying to them, we need some stuff to cover, and then you're signing kind of the annual contract in advance. Is what how does the pricing structure work for kind of getting them on board?
I mean, for this type of approach, you'd have like a implementation fee followed by a monthly subscription, or like a success-based pricing, whatever you go with. But the implementation fee can be there because you're positioning this as like kind of like a managed service, because it is, right, to start with. Like, you're not just going off the shelf to begin. Now, would this work if you're selling something for $19 a month to consumers? No. No, I don't think people are going to be able to get pre-sold on that. So just for anyone that's listening, don't twist my words. But for any B2B, I reckon this is very doable.
What are the what are the kind of the core elements to pre-selling? Do you think it's like the same as normal selling, but having everything dialed in? Like, for example, like understanding the problem, but in order to pre-sell, it needs to be an even bigger problem. Like, is it just or is it the same? Is it the same kind of the same skill set, the same everything?
Yeah, I mean, I use the same methodology across whether you've got like a existing product versus that's tried and tested versus one that's new. So like also say when companies go to the market with like a new product, usually they do already have like a distribution channel because they have something existing, but they might be trying a new a new version of or a new offering, and you can totally go to 10 particular companies and get them to buy into a pilot or something of their equivalent before doing anything else. Because again, if they don't buy into the pilot, don't bother. Like it's not going to magically start making you money later down the track. Like just always, if you got something new, try and pre-sell it. And the thing that changes during the sales process is the timeline to success would be the thing is that you don't really know what that is yet. And so you can hypothesize with them on that. And so if you go through a typical process of the first part is like really understanding the problem and discovering the problem with them, I would also be very upfront about, hey, we're creating this thing. We want to make sure it really meets your needs. That's why we need to understand more of this. And then after that, you present what you're doing, it should excite them. And then the next step is you could call it a proposal, but it's also planning the implementation. It's like getting their feedback and making sure that both of you are really excited about what the thing is and what it's going to do. Now, that second part there, if you do well, will look exactly the same with everybody because you should already know what the implementation is going to look like. You should already know how to handle any like objections or added requests that they may have. And you should be thinking if there are some added requests that are outside the scope of what we will ever do here, we just do this manually for this one customer rather than saying, no, we can't do that. That's something that also works. And like a customer success function would deliver that additional thing, whatever it may be, if it's a report or extra training or what have you. But no, it largely stays the same. The things that change, yeah, are just that maybe becomes a pilot. Maybe there is like you're agreeing on an implementation timeline, that type of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. To be honest, I think I can keep going off on all these weaves, but I also want to kind of talk about snowballing and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
um, and other things. But just before we do, you had co-founders. How important do you think co-founders were to give you the breathing room to just focus on sales? Because I think I saw an interview and I can't remember who it was, but someone doing quite well, and they were like, you really need to separate sales and product. And I think for like solo founders, they've got to like just go back and forth between the two constantly. How important do you think that was for like journey success?
Well, I mean, initially it was so Journey did start with 4 co-founders, and by the end, I was just me.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, so lost a co-founder every year for various reasons. I would say that during like while there were multiple of us, it did mean that other people could handle different things, and I could just focus on trying to sell the thing. That did help massively, right? So you have these other skill sets. But then by the end, like we had, a head of product, a CTO, so I could still just focus on selling because we now had those people involved. If you are a solo founder, which I guess at Snowball, and then I've got another project called Solo, which we could probably talk about a little bit later. I am solo, and so it is a different approach. But I think what a lot of solo founders do is they default to the product, and you should default to sales because if you can't sell it, then it doesn't matter what the product does. So sell the concept first and foremost. Now, as soon as you get a bit of a roll on, right, you use that money that you're getting from these like pre-sales or whatever it is to either generate the investment to hire someone to handle this for you, or you use it to just, and maybe some of your own funding to hire again. You should never completely outsource to someone else the product and product vision, right? It should be whoever the founders are. Like they are the driving force of this. So you do need to keep your hand on the pulse because it's also the thing you're selling. But I would always default to, like, your job is to keep the company funded. The way to fund it is to sell.
Yeah, it's the oxygen, right? It's
Yeah.
the oxygen. But I like that as well, like still keeping our pulse on product. Um, so before we do get on snowballing, I want to talk about the 331% growth story. So, you sold Journey in 2020. You joined Groove as VP of Sales, and you in 12 months you grew by this insane number. So, can you just talk us through, like, why did you decide to join Groove? Was it more for like more kind of commercial, like not as a not sales experience as a founder, but more in like a commercial type role? And then, but when you went there, what was it like? Build the GTM strategy, execute. What did you decide to do? How did you manage to do that?
So, I mean, I had at this point in time like a thesis of what I thought would work on the back of the experience with Journey. And so I wanted to work for a scale up that was wanting to do some cool things on the international scale. I wanted to work for some incredible founders. Groove had two incredible founders, one of those who had previously started and sold like and exited for hundreds of millions. And he bootstrapped that business. So it was all self-funded, no venture capital. So I'm like, okay, this guy knows how to do this. So I want to learn from him. That was why I joined. And the mission itself was around mental health, which was something that is still something that is very close to my heart. So that's why I joined. And then when I arrived, yeah, we were about 1 million in annual recurring at the time. And we, within 15 months, were over 4 million. Right, so that's pretty significant growth. And the key thing there was focus. So what I talked about earlier around like who is your ideal customer? How do we find them? How do we focus specifically on them? And we just turn off the noise and go narrow. If there's anything people can take away from this podcast is that go narrower than you think. Because when you go narrower, all of the people that you are now engaging with are so similar that it makes it easier for a couple of things to happen. First off, your product and what's required from your product becomes a lot more straightforward because it's like we don't have these different buyer types or we don't have these different types of users. They're all the same. The second thing is that you as a salesperson and as a marketer, if you're a marketer, you understand what the key problems are and the specific problems of that role, of that ICP. And so you wake up in the morning and you just know this. You can rattle this stuff off. You become your buyer in a sense. You know so much more about them. And then so when you're in a meeting with them, how much prep do you have to do? Not much. Like you still want to research their company and stuff to make sure that you're not asking stupid questions that you could find the answer to online. But you know their real pain points. You know how to ask questions that'll strike the nerve that causes them to act, that causes them to feel the urgency. And then the third thing is when it comes to like people buy when they see other people similar to them doing the same thing. And so if you can show a case study that looks almost like an identical company to them using your product with success, home run. Like I mean, obviously you have to do some other things around the outside of that to make sure that they're convinced, but that builds that trust and credibility. Versus, let's say if you're going to go sell into a financial institution and your case study is with an oil and gas company, do you think they care? The answer is no, they don't care. But if you go to Barclays with a case study based on NatWest, they care. They absolutely care. That's like a very easy
Yeah.
example. So at Groove, what we did was we threw out the customers that did not fit our core ICP anymore. And how we got to that point was we looked back at all of our customers who were our most profitable, easiest to acquire, had the most success with our product. The intersection of those three things became our ICP, and we did everything we could to find more of them.
I love it. I want to ask you a question on ICP because this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. So, how should we choose what narrow ICP it is? And there's a few different scenarios because there's the scenario where you don't have the data. Like for example, a year ago, we got like an 8-figure inbound climb, which was like the biggest we'd ever had, and we were positioned as design at the time. They wanted CRO. So then, as a result of that client, one data point, I was like, we're going all in on CRO. And got no clients, no new clients for like 2 months, not realizing that they came to us from that and it was only one data point. And so kind of like as I've got more people, I've kind of started to think, okay, like there's more patterns, right? You can look at more patterns between people. But we've just been working with someone recently, and they have like 7 ICPs, and it was just like, who do we focus on one? Do we focus on two? Um, and they've got loads of website visitors. So do we want to pick up all of them on the website? When we're doing outbound, maybe we want to focus on just one. It was just we just probably spent a week like thinking, who do we want to target here? And I guess we just came down to looking at their CRM. Who did they have the most of? Okay, they had the most of this type. We're going to focus on them, and we just picked the top 2. But I would be curious to know how you did it at Groove, how you decided on ICPs.
I think it even gets better when we start to look at Fresha. Series C company, now a unicorn, doing, I mean, probably the revenue numbers are more confidential now, but they are a big company, right? Like to be a unicorn status, you've got to be generating a certain amount of money, right? So they are big. When I first arrived, they had 12 ICPs, and I was the general manager of EMEA. Too many, and I was like, all right, let's reverse engineer who our best customers are by the exact framework or thesis I just said before. Easiest to acquire, most successful with the product, and makes us the most money. And there were four ICPs out of this. Now, bear in mind that there is like, at the time in my region, being EMEA, there is 40,000 customers. But we only decided to focus on 4 ICPs. So that's just order of magnitude. So if we only had 10,000 customers, could we have just focused on one? Maybe. That's just to give you some context. In doing that, we were able to go from 12 to 19 million in ARR in 10 months by narrowing our scope. So the companies that we focused on going outbound to, the companies that we jumped on the phone as soon as they hit our website, were one of those 4 ICP criteria, being barbershops, beauty salons, hair salons, aesthetic clinics. Any of these other types of companies, cool, they could sign up and start using it, but we weren't going to bend over backwards to try and get them on board, because for the reason of stats, like just looking at the numbers. And so, I mean, Joe, with any of the work that you're doing, if for the clients you're doing, I would always be looking at like, if we can just find one, would be a starting point, and then maybe we move to a second. And then we just look at, all right, if we've got these different ICPs, what are we doing about trying to attract them and like trying to generate leads with them? And that system I talked about earlier, like the snowball effect outbound system, works really, really well for this. And this is just where we surround our ICP with all this value to be able to constantly bring them in, and that value is either problem identification, so helping them understand they've got a problem in the space anyway, or it's solving it for them. Both of which means that contact is going to be made in some way.
There's a lot of value
Yeah.
in problem identification as well, because you're giving them clarity, right, on what they actually, what's the real problem that they need to solve.
Mhm.
We've talked about Fresher already. Let's move on to snowballing. So, um, can you just talk to us about what engagements there are with snowballing? Like, do you have like a ladder effect where people can start lower down? I know you have the vault, so they can get access to the vault and access all the materials, which is great, by the way. I've had access to the vault, and it's fantastic. Like, what's the process people can go through to kind of work up?
Yeah, great question. So, um, snowballing is I mean, basically created it to try and teach as many people as possible this thesis that I feel like I kind of fell upon. Like, it wasn't until I reverse engineered, like, how did I get this growth everywhere that I was like, oh shit, this is why. All plays on human psychology, all plays on like building trust with complete strangers. That's what this allows you to do. And so the first thing that people could use is they might just buy my outbound playbook, like the snowball effect, the outbound system. It's like 59 bucks. And it talks you through the different tactics you can use in order to build this trust really quickly to then convert a complete stranger into an actual engaged lead. That's the point of this. People also can go through my sales accelerator where we will go through systematically through how you identify the right leads, then how you generate leads, and then how you close leads or turn a lead into a paying customer. And within that, we're also looking at the different tooling you can use, like AI tooling, to help speed this up. But the thing that I want to emphasize with this while we're talking about it, AI does not replace the human to human interaction that is required for a sale to go through, particularly when you're talking about higher value contracts. You cannot automate your way out of that. You can do a bit for like smaller ticket items, don't get me wrong, if it solves a very niche specific pain point. But if as you start talking about something that might be slightly tailored or a slightly more complicated sale, the point of AI is to speed you up, not to automate the customer's experience. And I really want to make that clear. So within the sales accelerator, we go through how you can actually do that, like how you should, at a basic level, how you can create your own custom GBTs, how you can use some of the snowballing created GBTs, how you can start to use tools like Clay to lead score, to identify who your prospects could be, how you can use some of these tools to create your scripts or to auto generate some of the follow up ideas that you could have rather than just following up for following up's sake. These are some of the things that you can use AI for if you're selling like a high ticket product. And so we cover that in the sales accelerator. And then lastly, some teams want me to work with them directly. And so I currently work in a fractional capacity for a couple of companies. I only ever do a couple of those at any one point in time, though, because I am running a sales accelerator, a sales club, and have this outbound playbook.
Yeah, you got a lot going on, but
Yeah.
it's interesting. So, this outbound playbook is that different to the vault? Sorry, or do all of the things in the vault add up to the outbound playbook?
It just goes into much more depth.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a few useful things within the vault. That's just to give you hopefully help you solve something now. Like if you're like, I'm going into a meeting, how do I structure it? Well, cool. There's a discovery script in there and a video on how you run a discovery meeting. Use it. And then, all right, am struggling to generate leads. What do I do? Well, here is something that if you do this 60 minutes a day, you do one of these tactics, you don't even have to worry about leads again. That's the idea.
Amazing. I'm actually gonna. I think I'm gonna have a look at this outbound playbook after this. So I think we might need a bit of a boost. So that's good. Thank you. Let's move on to talking about some proof and results because I saw one of your posts recently was about Katie, but I obviously want to talk about Katie here. Can you talk to us about yeah. What Katie when she came to Katie when she came to you, and what happened by the time she left, and what you helped her with.
Yeah, so she went through the original sales accelerator, which I did about this time last year, actually. She was looking at closing a business down beforehand. She had just moved into the CEO role of this company that had been around for a little bit, but had just been going through a bit of turmoil, right? She thought one last roll of the dice. I'll go through this accelerator. If we can't figure it out, then we just don't do anything. Anyway, 30 days in, she had generated 64 leads and $50,000 of revenue. Business saved. That is the first thing. 4 months later, so the accelerator is a 30-day program, but I kept in touch with her because she got this really good result in the first 30 days. This business still exists because she did this. 4 months in, $508,000 of revenue from using the system. 9 months, she had generated 800 grand in invoiced. She had invoiced for 800,000, but she had signed $5.8 million of revenue, of like booked revenue. Business not just saved, man. Business is going very, very well. um, and that's in a period of 9 months. So she just was consistent with her approach. Use the different frameworks that you can use at each stage of the way to not wake up in the morning and look at your emails or to-do list or whatever and think, what do I do? Because she knew these are the things I should do today to keep moving the stuff along.
Wow. Yeah, you must feel very proud of that. That's the sort of kind of result that makes you realize I'm doing something pretty big here. And
Mhm.
and a lot of people don't. I come from an engineering background. I didn't really think much of sales before, and now like I love business to business. I don't think I could ever be in B2C because I think people are happier with the less stuff they have. But I think in B2B, if you help a founder, a CEO, an individual, they make more money, they can employ more people, their business does well. Like it's just the biggest win-win, isn't it? So it's good. You must feel good about that. So let's move on to. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I think we've got five minutes or so less left. Let's do the quick fire round. So, GTM heroes. Who do you look up to in the GTM space? Who do you think is ahead of the curve? Who's doing it right now?
There are a few people that I think are like, um, I think that they create interesting examples for us to look at and think, okay, this is a cool thing to consider. For starters, I'd start with Chris Donnelly. I don't know if you know of Chris Joe, but he's started and sold a couple businesses. He's big on building personal brand. That's what probably he's more well known for. But the reason why he has substance behind this is he's actually built businesses before, which is very different, right? And so his whole GTM is distribute, like create distribution and then sell through that distribution, sell to the audience, figure out what the problem that audience has and sell into it. Makes total sense, right? I mean, it's very hard to build that audience. He's someone to look at. And then some other people when you look over in more the US. I don't know these people personally, by the way. I know Chris personally, but not the others. Um, there are a handful of people on LinkedIn that I would absolutely follow. One is Demand Gen, if you've heard her name before. Very, very good at outbound email, like just like cold email, like how to approach someone. And so I would follow her. If you want to see how someone can create a little bit of controversy on LinkedIn, maybe Adam Robinson. I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that he suggests, but he's built two very successful businesses doing it. So, I think in any case, you should always go and listen to people who have done it before. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that you can see online. So I'd be wary of people's results before you go and take advice from them. So those are just like three that I'd look at, and more just like to take inspiration from. Scott Leese is another one actually out of the US, that GTM guy, that just says things as it is.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to put the links in the description. What hill are you willing to die on? Like, so what's one like belief about sales that yeah, you'll defend to the death?
I got a lot of them. I think that one of the key things is that people don't give a shit about you. And so you need to, what they care about is their problems and the key things they're trying to achieve with their day. And so whatever you do, you need to be thinking in that framing. So that's one thing that I prefer to downhill. That people won't care about your business, your product, your features. They don't care. And the other thing is that everyone should learn this skill. It is so applicable to all facets of life. You want to even negotiate what movie to watch that evening with your partner. That's sales. You're wanting to maybe try get a little discount when you go to buy your t-shirt the next day at a shopping mall. You're negotiating. It's a skill set that comes with sales. You're even like your friends going through a hard time and you're wanting to, like, if you start giving advice, they're not going to really listen. But if you ask thought-provoking questions to help them figure it out, that's sales. And so I think it's just a skill set that everyone should learn at some point in their life.
Yeah. Two really good ones there. And we'll do one more question because I want to be careful with time for you. What do you think is the secret to winning it in go to market today? Like, what are you kind of advising some of the people you're working fractionally with? Obviously, people are talking about the playbooks. Playbooks changed. Things that used to work no longer work. What do you think the secret is today to win?
I think you just got to go narrower. Like, stop trying to do the spray and pray approach. Just go narrow, and then figure out how you get in front of those people and do things that are unscalable to start with. And when they work, you start to scale them. Like, it sounds really basic, right? Like, I don't think some channels just are getting harder, but is anything dead? No. And I think you can make all of it work. And so if you're trying to figure this out for yourself right now, start with your ICP, narrow it, make a list of who they are, and then figure out the most effective way to get in touch with them via some of the many tactics that you can find. The outbound playbook has a bunch of them, of different things you can do, and also shows you how you can do them. And then you pick a couple of these tactical things and you just do them every single day. That becomes like your go to market. Now, at some point, you start to automate some of these things as you get bigger. But yeah, just pick a couple tactical outbound initiatives, and that is how you'll start to produce the leads you need.
Yeah. It's become clear. Like, look, Groove, Fresha, or JRNY. The lever has always been narrow. Like, that's the word of the word of the podcast, which is huge. And I want to kind of that's going to be the theme of today. But look, I want to be respectful. It's been amazing having you on. Where can people connect with you and learn more about snowballing? Where should they go?
Places. First place is I am overly active on LinkedIn, probably abnormally so. So, Michael Lovegrove on LinkedIn. The other place is www.snowballn.com. And that is where you will find me.
Awesome. We'll put the links in the description. Mike, thanks for coming on today. It's been a blast, mate.
No problem. Thanks for having me.